This is the good, the bad, and the ugly of Shang Chi. Well, not of the ugly. There wasn't anything ugly about this movie. I just saw it about a day ago. I'm not going to pretend I'm the biggest Marvel fan in the world. I've seen every single MCU movie, and I saw WandaVision, and that's where I stopped with the Disney Plus shows. This one, I saw the trailers, and I thought it looked like garbage. But then you had every review that came out hyping it up as the second coming of Christ, that Jesus has returned in the form of Shang-Chi. I saw so many reviews saying that this is the best origin film since Iron Man. Since the very first Iron Man, they gotta find new ways to hype up these MCU movies. You remember the OG Iron Man that we all love? Well, this is the best origin film since then. It's not. It's not. I think that accusation, claim, whatever, is insane to make this the best one since Iron Man. There's been so many better ones since then. Anyways, I'm going to be talking about the good and some of the bad. An Asian-based martial arts film that the MCU is trying to make here, but it's made by Disney, and you can tell it's like the white man trying to make an Asian martial arts film. I think it shows it many times. It doesn't feel like true and natural. It's like when the white man tries to make the Asian martial arts film, it's just so special effects heavy, so muddled by CGI. I hate CGI. Actually, no, I hate saying I hate CGI because there's so many great examples of how amazing CGI can be. If you watch like the newest Planet of the Apes movies or Mad Max Fury Road, like you could blend CGI so well. But when you have these Marvel movies that are so effects heavy, it just looks like you're watching a video game. And there's so many times throughout this movie where I'm just like, every single thing to me looks like it reminds me of the Star Wars prequels. Now, I do love the Star Wars prequels, but like you can tell many times that it's a person standing on an entirely blue or green screen, and everything around them is fake, and everything looks fake. And that's when I was looking at this movie. I'm like, everything around this person looks fake, except that I can tell that they're a real person standing on a green screen, and they got a spotlight coming down on them. Fake. Let me talk about something that I liked in this movie. The father. This whole movie, spoilers by the way, for everything. Shang-Chi's father is trying to find his wife who had died. He thinks she's locked away behind this wall, and he thinks she's calling to him, and that's what's going to incite like the final battle, the final war. Behind his wife, if you've seen the movie, is a giant dragon beast like behind that wall. But I do love his father's motivation. I like pretty much everything with Shang-Chi's father in this movie. I thought he was one of the more interesting characters in the movie, and that was definitely one of like the highlights of the film for me. One of the bad things about this movie is Shang-Chi himself. In the best Marvel origin film since Iron Man, the main character is like so forgettable. I don't think we're gonna be like when we walked out of Iron Man. Tony Stark is the reason, like, I mean, the movie was great in itself, but like a huge reason everyone was so captivated by that movie was Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. The charisma just like bleeding off the screen, and just like you wanted to watch him. I never had like, moments in the movie where I'm like, I can't wait to get back to Shang-Chi to hear what he's going to say next, or to see what he's going to do next, or to see what he's going to wear, or what he's going to, just anything. I never found him as an exciting character. And let's also talk about his friend Katie, who was played by Awkwafina, who I didn't hate, but I just found her kind of unnecessary at a lot of times. Like, there's a lot of times where Shang-Chi, his sister, and their father are talking about like some crazy shit, and he's talking about history and what he's been hearing about the wife and all this stuff. And Awkwafina, his random friend Katie, who's not a part of family or anything, she's just like there, like walking around with them, like listening in on all this crazy stuff. When all these like ninja people are hunting down Shang-Chi and like trying to chase him down, Katie's just like thrust into the action scenes, and she really serves no like actual purpose other than to deliver a line of comedic relief in the middle of all the action and all the drama. She'll just like break out with her comedic relief, and I don't think she ever serves more of a purpose in this movie other than comedic relief. And I think she hits on her comedy like 40% of the time. The Mandarin's also in this movie as comedic relief. So you got like two straight up comedic relief characters in this movie. That's already like the color palette of this movie. This is something I've heard a few people say, but it just, I hope not, but I think the days are lost when we'll get a unique looking MCU movie, an MCU movie that looks like it has some artistry and some style to it. Now every single MCU movie looks, they all look gray. They all have a lack of vibrancy and color to them, and they all look the same. Every single MCU movie looks like it was directed by the same director. Maybe except like Guardians of the Galaxy and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 by James Gunn, but even in that, like, you could tell, like, Marvel sucks some of the color out of that because he's like, remember, our movies need to be gray. They need to be colorless and lifeless and just really, really boring looking. So when the audience is watching a 2 hour effects heavy movie, they'll be bored. The movie's like 2 hours, 12 minutes, and like I thought it was entertaining for the most part, but every now and then it was just like, oh my god, we're gonna get on with the history lessons. There's so much exposition and so much history jam packed into this 2 hour movie. I was thinking, like, this should be a Disney Plus show because it seems like they have so much that they're trying to squeeze into this movie about the history of Shang Chi and his sister and his father and his mother and the Ten Rings, and which I did like the Ten Rings. I thought the idea was cool, but of the Ten Rings itself, I didn't like that it was like Shang Chi. Like, of course, why can't it be like someone earning? I thought this was, I didn't know shit about Shang-Chi, by the way, going into this. I didn't know a single thing about him. I just knew that there was 10 rings that made you powerful and okay. And I thought, like, just the movie I kind of conjured in my mind, which now I think would have been way more entertaining, is that I would have liked to have seen it if it was like, a bunch of people in a village and it's a sword in the stone type of thing. Like, you have to earn the right to get the 10 rings. Like, you have to work hard and earn it, and it'd be like a challenge, and nobody could do it, but Shang-Chi is the guy to do it, and he gets the 10 rings. But instead, it's like, oh no, you're just given the 10 rings because you're born into it. You inherited the 10 rings by your father because your father got them, and now you're just given them because you're just a privileged little freaking, and he happened to be born into the family of the Ten Rings. I think it would have been much cooler if Shang-Chi was an absolute nobody. And it's the same thing with the Star Wars thing. Like, people used to say, why does Rey have to be, privileged, like, born into this, like, oh, she's Luke's daughter, she's Obi-Wan's daughter, she's Palpatine's granddaughter. Like, she didn't need to be, and it turned out she was, but she didn't need to be at all. Why can't the hero just be an absolute nobody? And in Shang-Chi, why can't it just be an absolute nobody who worked his ass off and earned the 10 rings? And he did the challenge, he pulled the sword out of the stone. But no, it's just like, oh, my daddy's the guy, he's gonna give me $1,000,000 like Donald Trump. The action scene in this movie, I've seen a lot of people praise how amazing the action scenes were. I thought the action scenes were alright. We live in a world now where John Wick exists, and the Raid movies exist, and Mad Max Fury Road exists, and all these movies I named are from less than 10 years ago. The blueprint is there for how to make great action. This movie does better than, like, I'd say a lot of the MCU movies. It's not very shaky cam. There's a few takes that are one shot. It never cuts out to give you a wide angle and, like, moves. Like, you just watch the first John Wick and see, like, why we were all captivated by that action, why it was such a unique thing that we're still talking about it, like, 7 years later. We're still talking about the action John Wick. We're still talking about the action in The Raid that came out in 2011 and The Raid 2 in 2014, or Mad Max Fury Road in 2015. These movies captivated us by their action because it was different, it was unique, and it was done so well in a world where there's so many shitty filmed action scenes. These were like, this is how you do it. And I just can't imagine, like, yeah, Shang-Chi looked like they actually had some fight choreography and didn't try to hide it by shaky cam. They actually had some fight choreography, which was nice. Even if it was very special effects heavy and there was a lot of CGI taking over the action, they had decent action. But in a world where we have such great, like, blueprints for action, nobody's going to be talking, the way people are talking about John Wick's action scenes in 7 years, nobody's going to be talking about the action scenes from Shang-Chi in 7 years, and you're kidding yourself if you think we are. Let me talk about something good. There was cool dragons in this movie. I love dragons. I like the ending battle had some pretty cool dragons. The dragon from that the boy turns into in Spirited Away, there's a dragon that looks very similar to that in this movie, and I thought it was awesome. It has red hair, which was pretty cool. Then there's like a Jeepers Creepers looking dragon that like burst out of that wall, and that dragon looks super sick. One more thing about the action, jumping back to the action, but when we have that first bus scene and Shang-Chi is just like beating the shit out of every single ninja on that bus, it just feels like he became Neo without having to become Neo. He was already Neo. Like he's on this bus and like 20 ninjas start attacking him or whatever, and he's just like God, like untouchable. He's Neo from the Matrix too, but we didn't watch him become Neo. He just was Neo. And going back to John Wick, why that action was so captivating is because he actually got hurt. In the Raid films, the hero actually gets hurt. They get cut up. They get the shit beaten out of them. In these movies, they're untouchable. It's another thing I thought about with Suicide Squad. When in that scene, the new Suicide Squad, when Harley Quinn like breaks out of that like prison that she was being held in, really good action. You know what would have made that action better? If someone landed a single blow on her. If someone touched her, it's your action scene is much less entertaining when you have a hero who is untouchable. When your hero feels actually tangible and actually feels like they are in danger and they're still getting out of it and finding ways to survive even through adversity, and they're getting the shit being out of them by multiple people, but they're still surviving, still, beating the shit out of them worse and still making through it, then it's an entertaining action scene. But when they're fighting a bunch of useless grunts and they're like level 1000, all these people are level 1, and they're just untouchable badasses, it's just way less entertaining to look at and to actually care about these characters because you don't feel any danger. You don't feel any sense of danger in these action scenes. These action scenes are purely just, look how cool our hero is, and look how shitty these useless grunt stormtroopers are. If they were more on an equal level playing field, like the hero could be here and the bad guys could be here, just something, but this disparity is just way too much. I don't understand all the hype with this movie. The more I talk about it, like, it was an entertaining movie. I did laugh a few times. I liked the mythical creatures, the dragons, those big lion things. I like some of the action scenes, and I like the one dude who looked like the blue spirit from Avatar, who looked like Zuko. There was a few good things about this movie, but at the end of the day, this is yet another MCU movie that every single review hyped up as a second coming of Christ, and I think we're gonna forget about it pretty soon. I mean, as far as being the greatest origin film since the first Iron Man, I would argue that Captain America: The First Avenger is better. I'd argue that Guardians of the Galaxy is better. I'd argue that Spider-Man: Homecoming is better, and Black Panther is definitely better, and I can't think of every single MCU film off the top of my head, but Shang-Chi is not number 2 for me. That's it for me. Peace out. Check out my plants. This one's dying, but this one looks good.